Welcome to the next episode of the Ecom Growth Show. I'm your host, Danan Coleman, founder of Ecom Triage, co-founder of Catalog Defender, and I've got David Wachs from a company that you wouldn't necessarily know of in the ecom space, but it's something that I think a product that he produces that I think can make a significant impact with your customers. David, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So, this is basically a friendly conversation. Um, it's casual, but I am going to ask you 5 specific questions, just to kind of kick it off here. Before I start asking the questions, would you just give me an introduction as to who you are, where you come from, and then, of course, what you're doing today?
My name is David Wachs. I've been in messaging as part of marketing for over 20 years,
Mm.
21 years now. Back in 2004, I started a company called Sell It, and we were a text messaging provider for retailers. So we worked with like Abercrombie and Fitch and Toys R Us, Sam's Club, Office Max, that type of thing. We were doing 1 million texts a day just for one brand alone. And then I sold that company in 2012 and worked for the new owners for 2 years. And then in 2014, I was let go intentionally. It was all planned.
Yeah, the golden
The
handcuffs, I think
next,
they call that, right?
what's that?
Your 2 years there, I believe they call that the golden handcuffs, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So once those handcuffs were off, literally the next day, I started this company called Handwrytten, which is what I'm doing now. And Handwrytten is all about, basically while the 1 million texts a day worked, we had clients that had lines out the door every time they'd send a text message. What I realized is everybody's getting 1 million texts a day now and hundreds of emails and Facebook and Twitter tweets and all the rest. And people are really overwhelmed with electronic communication. And again, this was back in 2014, so things have only gotten exponentially worse.
Yeah.
So what Handwrytten tries to solve is creating a deeper, more personal relationship with your customers through the power of handwritten notes, if you could sleuth that from the name. So
I almost
today,
got there, but I'm glad you said it.
yeah, exactly, right. So today we have 200 robots that we built ourselves, and they write out handwritten notes, a lot of thank you notes, but they could be abandoned shopping cart notes, whatever it is. But we're primarily in the gratitude business because what we know for a fact, and we actually have research on, is by and large, customers of all brands don't feel appreciated by their brands they buy from. And if they did feel appreciated, they buy more, they rate and refer more, they buy more frequently, like all the good stuff. And when they're asked what would make them feel appreciated, the number one way to make somebody feel appreciated is just simply sending them a handwritten note. So it's a really relatively small gesture with a huge return, and that's what we help brands with.
Cool. Now, I am familiar with what your company does, not in practice myself, but more so that I've been aware of its existence for a number of years, actually,
Yeah.
well before you and I ever met. And here's my first question: like, one of the things that I did, I used to help run an energy company, like a third-party energy sales company. We sold deregulated energy in Texas, right?
Hmm.
And we actually took the CEO's wife and had her write every letter of the alphabet in both uppercase and lowercase. And then we created
Yeah.
these letters to people, and then we printed with extra thick ink, basically. There's like use more ink on the print is what we told the printer. And it
Yeah.
looks like a handwritten note in that the text wasn't perfectly aligned and stuff like that. It looked
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but it wasn't handwritten and you could tell, right? Um, your machines, they use actual ink and pressure to write these notes, don't they?
That's right.
So they're
And they
actually
passed the smudge
legitimately
test. Yeah.
in past.
Uh, I don't think anybody will be able to see, but we do what you're talking about. We vary the line height of each letter. We
Yeah.
vary the line spacing
Yep.
so that it doesn't look like you wrote on a hard line piece of paper. We vary the left margin so it doesn't look like you wrote straight down the side of a page. Nobody does that.
Hmm.
We warp the text ever so gently, so it looked like you were trying to write straight, but you kind of went off a little bit. And then we randomize the letters like what you do. We actually have like 5 or 6 copies of every single letter in our alphabets, and they're randomized. And then we handle ligature combinations. So how do you connect 2 O's? How do you cross 2 T's when they're next to each other? All those. And
Yeah.
so it's really an art and a science for creating these cards. And in the end result, um, is something like this, and we can even include your signature on it.
Yeah.
And people come and they do the smudge test. They'll lick their finger, and sure enough, it smudges and that type of thing. The other
Yeah.
thing is just the pen naturally follows the contours or the nooks and crannies of the paper. So you kind of see that variation in ink just because the paper has some texture to it.
Sure.
And, texture is really important.
Yeah. So, what kinds of paper can you write on?
So we have 2 different stocks. It kind of depends what you're looking for. One is a C1, it's called a C1S, which is a smooth on one side, uh, paper texture on the other side. And that's, whoa, as I spaz out here, that's good for full saturated images and
Okay.
photos. Um, I don't have any photo examples. Oh, here, like a photo card, a card with
Yeah.
wine bottles on it, or wine glasses on it. That is a C1S, and it's really about the what will print well off our digital presses. And then if you're not concerned about fully saturated images, like if you just want your logo on something,
Mhm.
um, then I'd recommend doing what's called a vellum stock, which is a more toothy, um, it just feels more premium, but it's only useful if you're not doing a highly saturated image. So our
Okay.
luxury clients do a lot of just like their logo, printed at the top of a 5x7 card, and then everything below that is written. So that works really well with the vellum stock. So it's really about kind of what's going to absorb the printed image, not the ink. We can write on anything ink wise. I mean, right now we're doing a project for a very large brand, and it's black paper and then silver ink.
Oh,
So, for them, they're paying the premium to do that, so we can
sure.
do that. But by default, it's always white, and then we can laser print a color on it if you need that, and then, we write with the blue pen.
Yeah, cool. Very early days, in my e-commerce, what we used to do is this is before fulfillment by Amazon, but we actually would write handwritten notes in ink on the invoice and then pack that into with the product.
Yeah,
And so, essentially what you're saying is I could do that at scale
correct.
and just have a handwritten note on just simple paper. Well, not quite simple paper, but basic, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There's the way we kind of think about inbox is it's personal, but not personalized.
Mhm.
So it's not going to say, "Hey, Joe, thank you so much for your order." It'll say, "Thank you so much for your order," written in pen, and then maybe it'll have a picture below it or something, a little doodle that they drew. Like we
Mhm.
do this for a mattress brand where um, they created 15 different doodles, something like that, so that every box you open, there'd be a different note and a different little drawing. So it looked like somebody really took the time every single time to create something really personal just for you. And that's
Definitely.
personal, but not personalized. And that's a really good strategy for inbox.
Okay.
For some brands where they have the benefit of their own 3PL, we actually have our robots in those 3PLs. So we work with it's a makeup brand, and we have our robots writing on the labels of the makeup. So it's makeup specifically for you, and then it says, formulated for Sarah or whatever. So,
Wow.
there are ways to do that, but the simplest form for Amazon sellers is just personal but not personalized.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, look, let's get into the questions here because I think they're going to be rather relevant to the listeners. Starting off with question number one, you did a survey of 2,000 customers. What insights can you share about that?
Yeah,
Consumers,
I kind
sorry,
of spilled the
consumers.
beans in the beginning, but basically only uh, well, first of all, number one, nobody's actually sending handwritten notes anymore personally. Like, why would you? Why would you drive a horse and buggy when there's cars and planes? So, people are using emails and texts. A text is the number one form of communication, followed by phone, followed by email.
Mhm.
But certain demographics, affluent people send a lot of handwritten notes, but all of that is really kind of not important. What's important is the following. We asked people if they felt appreciated by brands. In 2025, the answer is a resounding no. Only 12% of consumers feel appreciated by brands, and that's down from 18% in 2022. So we've lost a third
Yeah.
in 3 years. And then we asked them, well, what would you do if you felt appreciated? They said they'd buy more frequently, rate and review, tell their friends, all that good stuff. And then again, as I mentioned, they would the number one way to gain that loyalty is through sending a handwritten note. We
Yeah.
also asked what are kind of the most surprising form of communication, the most personal form of communication, and the most annoying forms of communication.
Okay.
And the most personal, according to the survey, and this hasn't changed in the since 2022, the first time we did it, the most personal form of communication is our phone calls.
Mm.
And then handwritten notes are the second most personal form of
Mm.
communication. And then, but when we ask them what's the most annoying form of communication, the most annoying form is also phone calls.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to ride the thin line between personal but not annoying,
Mhm.
handwritten notes are a great way to go. And I have
Yeah.
theories as to why they're annoying and all that. And then the most surprising form of communication is also handwritten notes. So, people receive so few of these days. And when they get one, it's very much an unboxing experience. Why did this brand take the moment to write me? They open the envelope, they look at the card and read it. So it's really got some pretty um, powerful outsized effects for it.
Yeah. Now, I have a friend who did a test and was doing handwritten thank you cards after the purchase,
Yeah.
right? This is post purchase. And she had incredible results on product reviews thereafter. So that what you say dovetails exactly into my own experience and my own knowledge of the metrics of if you produce handwritten, they do feel it is personalized. I mean, it is personalized, right?
Mhm.
But if you sell a product, 1,000 units a day, you cannot possibly do that at scale. And so you have figured out how to produce a handwritten note at scale. And now I've got a question for you. Can I write a handwritten note and send that to you and then have you write it out?
Yeah, so we would call that a doodle, in that it's like a fixed image that we just duplicate over and over again. And we do that for the mattress brands and some cosmetic brands and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Most of the time, when it's personalized, you don't want to do that because you can't create any merge fields, dear Joe, dear Sarah, dear Sally. You can't really do that if you just send us the full image.
Yeah.
The alternative is we could create a handwriting style for you and do
Okay.
it that way. But for inbox, I recommend actually doing exactly what you're talking about, which is create two or three quote unquote doodles, which is you scrawling some words across a page.
Mhm.
and then we'll randomize them, box them up, send them to you. They're relatively well, they're very cost effective because there's no envelopes to match, there's no postage. All those little things come into it, and then you just insert them in each box.
Yeah, good. So that actually dovetails into my next question, which is how can I integrate handwritten notes into my ecom platform? Let's take Amazon for example.
Well, Amazon's a toughie because
Yep.
last I saw, they said you're not allowed to use. First of all, they're not going to give you the recipient's contact information.
Correct.
And then if they do, because you're doing like third party fulfillment or something, you're not really allowed to reach out to them anyway.
True.
So there's a couple ways around this. Number one is you could do the personal but not personalized and include it in the product box, which is certainly very doable. Number two is to send it to them after they register their product. So if you include a little slip in the box, like register your warranty and get an extra 3 months warranty or some extra little
Whatever.
add-on.
Some offer.
Yeah, whatever, some offer.
Yeah.
Then you follow up with a handwritten note after that too. We do a lot of that.
Mhm.
For other platforms like Shopify, we actually have a full handwritten plugin for Shopify where you can automate it directly out of Shopify.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that's a
Wow.
completely, I know your listenership is mostly Amazon, but if you're doing anything with Shopify, you just install our plugin from the marketplace or store. I forget what Shopify calls it, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it goes from there.
The Shopify shop.
Yes, exactly.
Well, so a lot of my listeners do operate on Shopify. They may not operate, I mean, it's not for most of them, it's not the majority of their sales. It is, you know, 10 to 30%.
Yeah,
But I mean, no matter what, if they're using Shopify, which a lot of them are, that's still an incredible value because you are taking the time in the customer's eyes to build the brand and the personalized image of the brand in with the customer, right?
yeah.
So the fact I didn't even know that. We hadn't even discussed that because I mentioned that most of my listeners are Amazon sellers, but a lot of them also have Shopify. It's just not their majority. So that's really, really good.
Yeah, and it's super easy. You could basically set up triggers. So after their first purchase, send a handwritten note. After they spend a certain amount of money, after a year goes by, anniversary of purchase, if they buy a specific thing, you can set up all these little rules
I
and then
love it.
just send out the notes when those rules are true. It's very
Yeah,
simple.
okay. So this is for those of you listening, think of this as if you're using Shopify, mind you, but like the old days when you would automate the review request through whatever software you were using, whether it was Helium 10 or Managed by Stats or Jungle Scout or whatever, you could set up parameters where it said, if after 3 weeks, no refund, or after the second order, then send out the review request. And that was something, you know, 5 years ago plus was an incredible game changer on acquiring reviews. This is the new version of that as long as you're using Shopify. Um, David, I mentioned this earlier, but my friend who was doing the handwritten notes, she saw, I believe it was more than double. It could have been triple, but it was at least more than double the number of organic positive reviews on her product on Amazon. How does how does handwritten create an increase in reviews?
Well, handwritten with an I. So just sitting down with a pen and writing, doing it yourself. And then handwritten with a Y, my company is just that on steroids. So handwritten with an I generates more reviews because handwritten notes get opened at a 3 times greater open rate than print.
Mhm.
So first of all, you're going to get noticed. And then the read rates and response rates are remarkably high. We work with, unfortunately, everything is a case by case, but we work with car dealerships. And when they replace a handwritten note when they replace print with a handwritten note, they see a 17 times greater response rate. So Um, people appreciate when you send someone a handwritten note, it shows a deeper investment in time and appreciation than print or email or text. If you kind of, and I know this is a different industry, but people are people. When nonprofits ask their base why they don't redonate, we could think of that why retailers ask their base why they don't buy again. The number one reason is they don't feel thanked. And
Mm,
there's a difference in being thanked and feeling thanked. So
mm.
when you're thanked, I'm sure right after they gave that donation, they received an automated email. Here's your, thank you so much for your donation. Here you go. But is that really a thank you? I mean,
No, it's an automation.
that's an automation. So
Yep.
there's that difference in being thanked and feeling thanked. And I think the same goes for consumers across any industry.
Yeah.
So when you send a handwritten note to a consumer and thank them, genuinely thank them, you're building that personal connection. You're showing that deeper investment, even if they know it's fake, which they won't. Um, and then you're showing there's a personality behind the brand or a person behind the brand, and people buy from people, not from brands. So by exposing that person, you're just driving likelihood they'll leave a review.
Yeah. You just quoted something. I coined my own thing. People do business with people, not with
Correct.
businesses. It's
Yeah,
exactly the same thing. Like,
100%.
there's always a salesperson that sold the product. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. The personal connection is severely lacking in this day and age because of technology. But of course, technology has allowed us to access bajillions of people. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can't remember where I was, may have been even on my own podcast, on this podcast, but I made a prediction that I felt that snail mail was going to come back into vogue when it came to marketing because nobody's using it anymore.
yeah,
And
that's
handwritten
exact.
would be exactly that thing. If you could figure out, even if you're doing FBA, you don't have Shopify, there's no way you can send people a handwritten post purchase thank you. And the only thing you could do would be a handwritten insert, which I still think is worlds better than just doing a printed QR code that says register your product.
Yeah,
If you could find your audience demographic and then purchase, names and addresses, you could go to David at Handwrytten and say, "Yeah, I'd like to send a handwritten message to this list of 1,000 people." And I've never tested this. This is just a theory, but it could be quite effective.
yeah. It does get expensive thanks to
Yep.
postage. So you have to make sure you're really targeting the right people. But we depending on what you're selling, we do have people doing exactly that,
Oh, is that right?
prospecting.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Realtors, we've got solar panel installers, all sorts of things. But to
Mm,
your point exactly, about snail mail returning to vogue, the least used inbox is the one at the end of your driveway.
that's right.
Everything is going into your digital inbox, which quickly gets deleted. But handwritten notes kind of have a durability to them where, we have, again, not related to retail, but we have a piano tuner, tunes your piano, comes back to your house a year later after,
Mhm.
well, they tune your piano, send a handwritten note, thank you. A year later, they return to your house. That handwritten note is standing up on the piano.
Right.
And so not only was it open and read, it was kept. No email or text message is going to be kept. And then it's put on display on the most prized possession in the home.
Yeah.
That's real estate that's typically reserved for family photos and graduation announcements, right?
Right.
So no marketer can buy that space, but yet this piano tuner has it, and every time they play their piano, they're gonna be reminded of the piano tuner. So
Yeah.
it's really remarkable the power such a simple gesture can have.
Mhm. Yeah, fully agree. All right, so I've got just a few more questions for you here, and then we're gonna wrap it up. It's already been very, very valuable in my opinion. My next question is this: how can brands stand out in today's crowded market space? How do they cut through the noise?
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to be very intentional with their marketing and not just sending another email. I think sending 4, if you have the ability to build a preference center where you're sending cross-channel communication, like you send them an email, you send them a text message, you send them a handwritten note, and allowing people to opt in and opt out of that is one thing. But just being intentional and not just spamming the crap out of people. Um, like we don't say send a million handwritten notes to people. We say send 4 a year. So
Yeah.
we're unfortunately we're not getting rich that way. But a few surprise and delight moments I think really go a long way.
Yeah, cool. I fully agree. Yeah. It's sort of, I could put this maybe akin to the unboxing experience, you know? Like Apple, when you unbox that new MacBook Pro, I just want the box top to come off, right? But Apple has it engineered so that the vacuum suction is such that it just goes,
Yeah.
and it's like, this is an experience. And then I open it, go, finally, it took 5 minutes, that box top came off. And then I have a little tab that I pull and it pulls the laptop up. And that that does speak to the brand, like, we are quality,
Hmm.
and in our cases as e-com sellers, I would say that I think it's important that you communicate to your customer, like, "Hey, we care about you using our product, and we wanna say thank you." And there's nothing, the old saying, "You only get a first impression," or "You only get a first impression once," you know?
Hmm.
So if you can make that like really resonate with that client, I think that's a good thing, and because they'll think immediately positively. And if there is a problem, which we all have issues with manufacturing and stuff like that, if there's a problem, they're far more likely to forgive you if you've made a really strong positive impression right off the bat.
100%. I mean, it's called the service recovery paradox, which is people actually appreciate you more and have more loyalty if something goes wrong and you overcorrect for it than
Yeah.
if nothing went wrong in the first place. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we
Interesting.
have a client, it's a e-com brand. They do snacks. They send you office snacks.
Yeah.
And when they screw up, whether the snacks were the wrong snacks or they came damaged or they didn't send the box in time, they'll send a follow-up box and a very heartfelt handwritten apology saying, "We're so sorry for this." And they find out that that second box of snacks with the apology actually raises the overall lifetime value more
I
than
believe it.
had they never screwed up in the first place.
I
So
believe it.
then they
Yeah.
just screw up with everybody to raise all boats. But true story.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. That's so funny. I don't know if I agree with that methodology, but it's hard to argue with
Yeah.
statistics. On the polar opposite side of this is, there's a fairly large company that they're called Wagon. They do all kinds of electronics. They've been around forever. I purchased a 1200-watt battery bank that I use for my off-roading to run my fridge and stuff like that. And I got a dud, and it failed. I lost my food on day 1 of like a 5-day trip, had to eat my friend's food and stuff like that. And I reached out to him. I said, "Guys, there's something wrong with this thing," because I thought that the battery just drained somehow. But when I went to plug it in, it was still at like 87%, but the unit just died. And then they said, "Oh, okay." Well, actually, first of all, they said nothing. And I sent them several emails and they said, "Yeah, we got it. Cool. We'll take care of it." And then nothing. And so they ghosted me for months, all the while saying, "Oh yeah, we're so sorry. We'll get this. We'll get you your RF, your return RA, return authorization." Nothing. Like, guys, come on. What's going on? Eventually I got a new unit. It happened to the same freaking unit, but by the time I got that unit and by the time I used it again, I was outside of my 1-year warranty period of the original unit. I reached out to them. I said, "Hey, this unit is doing precisely the same thing. I've had it for 3 months or 4 months or whatever it is. Same problem." And they said, "Oh, yeah, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it." I was like, "Look, this is a defect that you guys have. I brought it to your attention 3 months after I bought it the first time. It took you 4 months to get me the replacement. And 3 months
Yeah.
after I got the replacement, when I finally go to use it, I lose my food again." Right.
Yeah.
And eventually, now it just so happens that I am part of a monstrous off-road network with many, many tens of thousands of people.
Mm,
I've got my own YouTube channel, and I've got a group that I'm a part of where we all could do content on each other's YouTube channels. So I just told them, instead of sending it from my personal email, I sent it from my Adventure with Danan email, and I basically just said, "Look, this is not okay. All right. I do happen to represent a lot of people that would use your products if it were good." Anyhow, not to go on a rant, they basically said, "Oh, Mr. Coleman, we're so sorry. We'll give you this cheaper version, or you can get 30% off of a more expensive version." I'm like, "You guys suck."
yeah, yeah.
And that would be the opposite. And unfortunately, there are a lot of brands out there that sell on Amazon that are that way. They're like, "Well, we got the sale from you, so we don't really care about you."
Yeah. You know, I bought a barbecue grill from Barbecue Guys recently, and part of it came damaged. So I called them and I said, this came damaged. They said, okay, well, throw that part away. There's no point in packing up and boxing it up. And they had another part on my driveway the next morning. I mean, they're big parts. I don't know how they got it that quickly. That part was fine. I mean, everybody expects good service. But what really stood out was the is surprising service or unexpected service. So then 2 or 3 days later, they called me and said, "We just wanted to make sure everything was resolved to your liking."
Amazing.
And that's, not a handwritten note. I'm not
Yep.
pushing that. I'm just saying
Yep.
it's um, that remarkable service that really gets noticed. And now they have a client for life, you know,
Yeah.
just by going out of their way and calling me a few days later, so I didn't feel like a transaction anymore. It
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
It really does. It really does. And me on the other on the opposite end of that, I feel like I was merely a transaction, you
Yeah,
know?
that's rough.
And yeah, and they literally didn't care, and they had all kinds of excuses, but yeah. And I was going to ask you, what are companies getting wrong about loyalty, but we literally just answered that on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, and the other thing they're getting wrong about loyalty just is that they're treating loyalty like you buy it by just giving more discounts, more, and if that's the case, then you're just addicted to a discount machine, and it's not really client customer loyalty. It's just you're bribing the hell out of them. So, that's not really loyalty. But when you serve the customer better and they really feel something for your brand, that's loyalty.
Yeah, I fully agree. All right, David, I've got one last question for you. This is kind of a big one. Are handwritten notes trackable, and what sort of ROI could one expect to see?
So it really depends. The best way to track it, I would say, is to do an A/B test and see, okay, well, we sent these people a handwritten note. We didn't send them anything. In this other test, which group is succeeding, or is there a difference at all? And if not, then maybe adjust your message, or it's not right for your audience, whatever. You could also do a QR code on there, and then through our platform, we could track exactly which recipients are responding to those QR codes.
Mhm.
But the fact is, a lot of people don't scan QR codes. So I would say that's not a great way to do it. I think really it's an A/B test type of situation, and that's the best way to really track it.
Cool. Cool. And then on the ROI side of things, I can speak from a singular, we'll call it a case study. I mentioned it earlier, but my friend, using handwritten notes, saw more than double the organic number of reviews on her Amazon page and maintained a 4.8 or above star rating on her products. David, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. For anyone that's interested in speaking with his team, it's handwritten.com. Written is with a Y, so handwrytten.com. He's doing some really cool stuff. You can get extraordinarily personalized messages, in to the degree that it is handwritten. So David, thank you much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners before we sign off?
No, Dana, and I really, appreciate you having me on here. I'd say the first thing to do again is I'm here preaching handwritten with an I. So pick up the pen and write to your 20 or 30 customers. Then once that becomes egregious, but you see the value, then give us a ring and we'll help you out from there.
Sounds good. David, thanks for being on the show.
Right on. Thank you.
All right. You bet.